I spend a lot of time in small towns, and there's a uniqueness about small town life that is reflected by you folks. Today when we were riding around through the community, all the people who are out showing appreciation for what we're providing. 1,500 of us are dying each day. World War II vets. So in a way, what I'm going to talk about is who we were, what we did, and what's happened to many of us who are the ones we were thinking about, known as the fallen, no longer here. 1944, I wish I could take you all back to that period of time. In 1944, graduate from high school, 5 weeks later, you passed your pre-induction physical and had your first experience with how the military operates. Absolutely no consideration for privacy. And you're going to learn there is no privacy. And for a long time, there will be no privacy. Shortly thereafter, you're put on a train, smoky, dirty, Boston and Maine railroad train, that joins up and takes you to, of all places, early in August, Camp Landing, Florida. For a New Hampshire ride, Florida in August, no air conditioning, sand, fleas, you name it. And that was our basic training site. Why? Because chances are we were going to be sent to the South Pacific. 16 weeks of basic training. The Army loves to do basic training because, first of all, it tears you down to a number and a nothing. Then it builds you up to the image that they want. In essence, if you want to be somewhat cruel about it, you could say their goal in the infantry was to make killers out of you. And that's what it was all about. Upon completion of basic, we were allowed to go home for a short leave. And now for me, things get exciting, as for many others. Instead of going to the South Pacific, they needed us in Europe. The winter of '45 in Europe was the coldest winter on record. We still had our summer attire from Florida. However, they sent us over on a beautiful, beautiful cruise ship, the Ile-de-France. 10,000 GIs on one boat. And now we're going to learn that there's some new odors in this world. Because you have a lot of C6 personnel, no showers, 2 meals a day, and 4.5 days later, however, for the mainland. Overnight train, Portsmouth, an LCD, landing craft tank, which is nothing more than a barn that floats. And here we are crossing the English Channel in January on an LCD. If you weren't sick on the Ile-de-France, you're going to be sick on this one. Quickly we land in the Havre, France, and are put on what is known as 40 hommes, 8 chevaux, 40 and 8, 40 men or 8 horses. It's nothing but a boxcar. And for 2 days, we go across France to basically the Battle of the Bulge. 40 and 8 was a cold experience. I came from New Hampshire and I froze. Once we arrived at the 79th Infantry, we were greeted by a sergeant. And during that greeting, we underwent a Muller attack. First time I've heard somebody screaming, "Incoming!" And they weren't talking about NATO. That was our experience of joining forces with the 79th Infantry. Fortunately, no one was harmed. And now we're involved in this whole experience called the Battle of the Bulge. Highlights. How many of you have ever seen the series Band of Brothers? Quite a few. In bands of brothers, the 101st Airborne relieves the 79th Division in late January, perhaps late February, early March, because we were pulled offline and sent to Belgium to train to go across rivers in assault boats. We went across the Ruhr River, and eventually we were to cross the Rhine. As I sit in Vine Valley and look at the lake, I think to myself, the Rhine River was about twice as wide as the widest portion of the lake. Canandaigua is about the size of the city of Wessel, or ESL, where we are going to cross the Rhine and we're going to go through Wessel. The night prior to crossing the Rhine, we're all in foxholes, and we experienced the largest concentrated artillery bombardment in the world. We were next to the British. The British love to have excesses of armament. So, all night long, starting after midnight, the ground shook. We were in foxholes. We didn't have any extra clothing because they didn't want us to carry anything on board these assault boats. So you shivered all night. And you began to go through you continue to have the emotions that are related to what it's like. You're afraid, you're upset, you're angry, you're concerned, and you think about home, and you wonder if you'll ever see it again. Now, the unique part of this part of the story is the next morning, on March 24th, we boarded assault boats which held about 15 or 16 of us. I sat approximately in the middle, and to the right was a plaque which said, Great Marine Boat Company, Penn Yan, New York. I hadn't the foggiest notion where Penn Yan, New York is. I came from New Hampshire. New York was another word. I promised myself that if I ever lived through this experience, I would visit Penn Yan, New York, and visit the Great Marine Company, which years later I did, except that they had folded 2 weeks before I got there. From the crossing of the Rhine, we then hit the whole Ruhr Valley area. Dortmund, Bochum, Essen. Dortmund, Bochum, and Essen would be like putting 3 Pittsburghs in a row. It also had thousands upon thousands of slave labor people, personnel. And before the war ended, we were taking care of them. And that was another experience of odors again. See, you're picking up odors all the way through, smells that you've never smelled before. So we assisted them getting cleaned up, and in many cases, providing them with enough food so they could survive. We quickly learned that somebody who's been starving, you don't feed them everything they want to eat. Otherwise they'll kill them. So we were very careful. That basically then brought us full circle to what we had been sent there to do, which was to liberate Europe. The liberation process freed up a lot of people. So you were able to say to yourself, it was worth it. But what happened to you? You were exposed to things that you never imagined you would ever be exposed to. So you came home. You saw your mother again. You hadn't seen her for basically 3 years. Her hair had turned gray. She hugged, she kissed, she cried. Father, uncomfortable. He'd seen a boy leave. 3 years later, he comes back a man, having seen a lot of things that the father had never seen. So you get through that rough period, and then the determination is, what else do I do with my life? You've been told what happened then. GI Bill, education, a whole new lifestyle. Never talked to anybody about this. For 55 to 60 years, nobody knew. Not my parents, not my friends, not my colleagues, not my students. To this day, many would say, you are in the service? In a kind of awe. Yes. Where did this whole story end? There are many more like me who haven't talked about the experiences, who took their memories of what it was like with them, and these memories are lost. I think it's very important for all of you who have anyone in the military, who has served in the military, who will serve in the military, make sure that you have documentation, information, insights as to what it did to and for them. So it becomes your responsibility to be basically a historian. Make sure that all these stories are kept. Last but not least, the one thing that I also came away with, or many things, but a thing I came away with, there's an English term called, they also served who stood and waited. And that's all the civilians of all the wars, the mothers, the fathers, the brothers, the sisters who stayed home and sweated it out. So it becomes also important to follow through on what today is pretty much a traditional, as they see, to say of them when you say, thank you for your service. It's very nice. But the ones who should also be thanked are the mothers, the fathers, the siblings of those who have served. And to them I would also say, thank you for everything that you've done. Thank you.